Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of the Be Ready Utah PrepCast. We hope you have been enjoying our PrepCasts and find them interesting and informative. We're really excited today about our topic of flood awareness, Utah's Flood Awareness Month. And we have joining us today two special guests from the Division of Emergency Management. We have Kathy Holder, the floodplain manager for the state of Utah, and Jamie Huff, the risk map manager for the state of Utah. So Kathy and Jamie, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yes,
So you're welcome. This is Utah's Flood Awareness Month, right?
It is. Governor Herbert has declared it Flood Awareness Month. It's something that we really wanted to be aware of early because our flooding danger comes up more in the spring. And so we know that it takes 30 days for flood insurance to come into effect. And so we want people to get this message right away that their homeowner's insurance does not cover flood.
Okay. And we're right around the corner from flooding, right? We've had a really wet winter, lots of snow, good for the skiing, good for the water, but it also could mean flooding. We've seen a lot of flooding in the past when we have wet, heavy winters. And so we kind of looking towards that again this spring, do you think?
There's a possibility. Our snowpack is above 100% in many areas. And also, we want people to be aware that 70% of our flooding that happens throughout the state is outside of a FEMA special flood hazard area. So everybody needs to be prepared, and it's actually a lot less expensive for those that are in the low risk area to be covered. And they need to watch out for those summer and spring storms, as well as in the fall. We've had flooding throughout the year.
Okay. So you talked about the importance of having insurance coverage, but you mentioned these areas, and are you talking about the flood map zones that is part of your management? Is that what we're talking about?
Correct. So the state of Utah does flood risk identification for the state. We provide flood risk assessments and flood risk maps in the form of FEMA flood insurance rate maps to communities, and I manage the program that does that.
And where can people go to find out if they're in one of those zones or areas or not?
They can go to msc.fema.gov to find out where they're at in a flood risk zone.
www.msc.fema.gov.
Correct.
Okay.
And I wanted to point out that only less than 10% of our state is mapped with a flood risk. So there's a large portion of our population that is actually not in a special flood hazard area, like Kathy said. So again, flood insurance is extremely important for our citizens.
Okay, whether they live in a flood zone or not, they can still get the insurance, right?
They can. We have 220 communities that participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, and there are only about 23 who do not within the state. So any of those communities who participate in the NFIP can get flood insurance, whether they're inside that special flood hazard area or out. And just to reiterate what Jamie was saying, when she's saying less than 10% of the state is mapped, she's meaning that we haven't looked at the risk of the rest of the state yet. So that's why it's so important. There are so many areas that are high risk that are not mapped yet, so people don't know it.
Right.
Now, I've heard a little bit about going after that insurance, that some insurance agencies may not have information about flood insurance or may not encourage people to get flood insurance. So what can we tell them about that?
So it's really important that they discuss it with their agent. And if their agent isn't comfortable with writing a policy or tells them they don't need one, don't leave it at that, because a lot of agents just are not well educated about it. And we're working really hard to educate them. We're doing things with the insurance commissioner here at the state to work on that. But at this point, it's got to be the consumer that is the pusher. And if their agent just simply won't write it, go Google another agent. Find someone who will. There's plenty of people online that are willing to write it and that will do it right for you.
So is it expensive, and does that price go up depending on whether you live in one of those zones or not?
The price does vary whether you live in a low, medium, or high risk area. Preferred risk policies can be anywhere depending how much coverage you get. Say $40,000 worth of coverage in a preferred risk area, which is the low risk area, may only be $90 a year. We could do like $250,000 would be closer to $400 a year. So people can pick and choose how much they have, but they need to talk with their agent about what ramifications there are if they're only doing the lesser policy.
Okay. And this is important because regular homeowners insurance only covers water floods from the pipes inside. So natural flooding is not covered by homeowners insurance. And what's some of the average costs from a flood? You know, if you've got some water in the basement, what's an average damage cost?
So about an inch of water can be over $26,000 worth of damage.
And that's probably not the kind of money we have laying around the house to be able to make those kinds of repairs at that cost.
Correct.
Right.
In 2017, we had the floods in Salt Lake City, and there was 2 inches of water that came down just in the form of rain in about 40 minutes, and we had hundreds of homeowners and business owners who had $20,000, $40,000 worth of damage. Some of the schools had $1 million in damage or more. So it really is a problem, and it can happen just from a quick rainstorm.
Yeah. Okay.
And that area was not also identified as a special flood hazard area, so all of those claims came from outside of a mapped special flood hazard area. And 20% of all claims come out of outside of a special flood hazard area.
Okay. Can we talk, being Flood Awareness Month, a little bit about the protective action? What do people do to survive flooding, the rising water, the rushing rivers and streams like that? We have protective actions.
Mm-hmm.
And so for flooding, we call that turnaround, don't drown, go to higher ground. That's the basic protective action for flooding. So people survive the floods in the first place. What are some other good preparedness tips that we have for flooding?
Well, I would say, especially looking at those people that are living below burn scars right now, because
Right.
we've had several burn scars in the state, that they need to be ready to, if they see that there's a storm coming, they need to pack up and move out of the area, pack up in their car, go out of the area during those storms. Don't let kids or any family members sleep in a basement. That can cause so many problems with the water and the debris that can come into the basements and hurt people and even kill them.
Okay.
Another thing is really watch your kids around these high swelling rivers that we're going to be seeing when spring runoff comes. Just kids are attracted to water, and so are we. We as a human race are attracted to water. So just be very careful around those swelling rivers, and especially during monsoon season. We have really large, massive storms that we get that just dump a ton of water. And you may have a flash flood and be in an area and not know that you're in that area. So be very well aware and very prepared of where you're going, where you're hiking, where you're traveling, and just make sure you know what that risk is.
Okay. And we know here in Utah, the majority of our emergency preparedness, emergency declarations, presidential declarations, were related to flooding, right? 10 out of 12 of our emergency declarations were for flooding. Yes, we face all kinds of hazards here in Utah, but it seems like it's the flood ones that seem to get us and cause the most damage. So great information. Is there anything else you want to add? Where else can people go to get more information about flood awareness, insurance, flood maps?
Flood maps, they can, other than the msc.fema.gov website, they can always go to their local community official. Every community that participates in the National Flood Insurance Program has a floodplain administrator designated. They can go talk to any one of them and get identification of what their flood risk is.
And as we're reaching out to the communities, making them be aware of the flood insurance is a need within the state, and that they need to mitigate their own risk, because there isn't anybody that's going to come in and pay for their damages afterwards. The cities, the counties, the state, we don't have the money to come in and take care of people. And even with FEMA, the average individual assistance, if they did get a presidential declaration where they got individual assistance, average is only $5,000 per household. We've never even gotten that in Utah with all of our disasters.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That emphasizes the importance of this. Now, you've got a new website as well. What's the new website?
We do. So it is FloodFacts.Utah.gov. So FloodFacts.Utah.gov. And that gives all sorts of information about where you can go for insurance. And it also has some information for those insurance agents out there that may not know what to do about flood insurance, so that they have some good information.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Again, appreciate you, Jamie and Kathy, for joining us here today on Be Ready Utah PrepCast. You as well, please share this. You can find it on our YouTube channel, Be Ready Utah YouTube channel, Be Ready Utah Facebook, at Be Ready Utah, and hashtag BRU PrepCast. Please share your questions with us and tune in next time. Thank you very much.